Hello. This video is meant for an elementary statistics student towards the end of the course when you start doing hypothesis testing. This example will do a full hypothesis test where we'll be testing a claim using the critical value method. Okay, so let's say a college professor claims that the average cost of a paperback novel for his class is no more than $27.50. A sample of 50 books shows that the average cost is $29.30 with a standard deviation of 5. So we're going to test this claim at the 0.05 level. So what we're trying to figure out is, well, the sample came out to have an average cost of over $27. So at first it looks like we should definitely support the professor's claim, but we need to see if just because that sample came out to have an average cost of more than the $27.50, is that really enough to say that on average, that's in general, that statement is true. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to write out the claim. Okay, the actual claim here is that the mean cost is no more than, so that's less than or equal to $27.50. Okay, so that's what the professor's claim is. Now we'll decide where to put that. Okay, so we have to fill in h sub 0 and h sub 1. Or sometimes they're called h sub 0, h sub a. I'll use h sub a in this one, the alternative hypothesis. Okay, so this claim could go in either one of these. One of the biggest misconceptions is that the claim should always go into h sub 0. In this case it does, but only because our claim has the equal sign in it. Okay, so the h sub 0 always has to have the equal, no matter where if it's the claim or not. So my h sub 0 is the claim in this case, which means our alternative is the complement of this, which is greater than $27.50. Okay, so there, in this case, this happens to be our claim. But remember, that's not always the case. The claim could be in either one. I'm just going to label it there. All right, so there's our first step. Okay, our second step now, there we go, in step number 1. Our second step is to find the rejection regions. Okay, so I always draw this out with a normal curve. Okay, so let's see. Now this one is a right-tailed test. Because our alternative, we're going to reject high values, okay? Our alternative has greater than, so our rejection region is towards the top. Now using alpha equals 0.05, if I found this critical value, I'm going to call it z sub c, that has 0.05, it has to have 0.05 area in here. Okay, so this would be 0.05. So if I found that corresponding critical value, that would be 1.645. Okay, and you get that using the tables, or you can use the calculator, do inverse norm. But you have to find the critical value that corresponds to having 0.05 in the right tail, which means 0.95 in the left tail. Okay, so there's our second step. Let me get a new slide. Let's see. Okay, our first slide, if we look back at this, h sub 0 was the claim. Okay, so in this case, we're deciding to reject that. We're deciding to reject h sub 0. So in this particular example, that means we are also deciding that we can't support that claim because the claim was in h sub 0. Okay, so now step number 3. Okay, so step number 3 is going to be find the test statistic. Alright, so we were given that the actual mean came out to be 29.30, and we were given that S for the sample came out to be 5, and it said it was a sample of 50. So let's convert this into a z-score. So that would be 29.30. Subtract off what we're testing it against, which is 27.50. So remember, this is my x bar. This is my mu. Okay, Okay, so over standard deviation, which is 5 divided by square root of 50. Remember, this is my n, and this is my s. So if I calculate that, that comes out to be 2.54. Okay, so let me redraw what we had on the other slide. Okay, we had our critical region. Let's go over what that means again. So this was 1.645. Okay, so what this means in here, this that we found there that we shaded before, this is our rejection region. Meaning if our test z comes out anywhere in that region, we're going to reject h sub 0. Remember, our decision is always based on h sub 0. So that's our rejection region that we shaded. Okay, so now if I look at our test z is going to be somewhere, say, right there, 2.54. Okay, because this is above 1.645. So this z right here is in the rejection region. Okay, drawing it out will really get you to see why we're rejecting. Okay, because I made that rejection region, my z was in there. Okay, let's pull up another slide. Decision. Okay, so step number 3. Make decision about h sub 0 first. I'm not going to worry about making a decision about the claim. I'm making a decision about h sub 0. So in this case, since z fell in the critical region, fell in the rejection region, we will decide, we will reject h sub 0. Okay, that's our decision. Now, the last step will be make a decision about the claim. Now I'll decide, what does this mean about the original claim? Okay, so in this case, if you remember back to our first slide, okay, so our final decision is that we cannot support the claim that the average cost of the textbooks is less than or equal to $27.50. We found enough evidence to reject that h sub 0 and to reject that claim. So remember, these last 2 steps you should look at as 2 individual steps. You make your decision about h sub 0, then you go back and see where your claim is, and depending on where your claim is, we'll decide if you can support your claim or not support your claim. Thank you.